everybody, and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, Harvest Church's only official podcast. So far, I'm Mike Greiner, lead pastor of Harvest Church in Western Pennsylvania. With me is Will Land. Hi, Will.
Hey, Mike.
So, dude, Harvest is the name of our church.
Yeah?
Yeah, so it's like the worst name for a church.
Well, I can't go back in time. You guys solidified that
I
long
did not
before
choose
I
the name
existed.
Harvest. Now, I like it if we were the only one.
Yeah, it's not a bad name in theory.
There's
it's just too popular.
There's Harvest Baptist Church just up the road. They're both bigger. They're more visible because they're right off 28. But then there's the Harvest Church Network.
There's tons of Harvest.
That got changed. And the guy out in California, Greg Laurie. There's Harvest everywhere. So we just got back from a bunch of pastors. And whenever I say, where you from? Or where are you from? I say Harvest. They always want to. They always start to think like, you know how someone, if you say I'm from Albuquerque, which I never say, they say, oh wait, I got a friend there. They start to think, which Harvest is it? So I don't even let them get it out. I just say, not that Harvest, no matter what they're thinking. Anyway, we are Harvest, the one in beautiful Western Pennsylvania.
Well, and we learned that the painful way when we first started doing this podcast, trying to figure out how to instruct people to find it. You go on your podcast app and you type in the word Harvest Church.
You ain't finding us. Because we are Harvest, but we're not that important.
Correct.
In the great pantheon of Harvest churches, we're way down there. You know, there's certain church names I wouldn't give Harvest, I wouldn't give Cornerstone, I wouldn't give Crossroads. I'd get, you want a name that's easy to find. It should be something like Gurgle Snurp. Because ain't nobody called the church Gurgle Snurp Church. But anyway, it does matter what you say. And recently we've been talking about the tongue because Jesus was talking about the tongue. He said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that was way back in Luke 6:45. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good. The evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so Jesus says, look, if you are a good person, it's going to overflow out of your mouth. If you're a bad person, it's going to overflow out of your mouth. How would you say your language has changed since before you were a Christian and after?
Oh, in
a lot of ways.
Changed? It has changed, and not just in potty mouth behavior. I mean, I think that's how most Christians think. I'd honestly say potty mouth stuff is stuff that I still have to be careful of. It's a habit that dies hard.
Yeah.
But definitely seen major changes in harshness with how you speak with people, or as you said in the sermon, it's bridling those mean-spirited thoughts that well up in you against other people and not letting them out of your mouth. I love that visual you gave. The thoughts are coming up your throat.
Yes.
They're on your tongue.
Yes.
They're hitting the back of your teeth.
Yep.
And
don't let them out.
And recognizing those as the old man, the flesh that you have to put to death. The old man wasn't put to death before, so a lot of that came out
that
more frequently.
Yeah, that was from James. And
James,
or was it
3.
No, Paul? Was it James? Who said? I'm looking that up right now. It said, I think it's Paul. Yes, it was Paul from Ephesians 4:29. He said, "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth." Like it's trying to get out of there. Stop it.
Yeah, don't let it proceed.
See, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. There's not a human who's not named Jesus, and not counting all the Mexicans who are named Jesus, because there's a lot of them. But I mean, the Jesus, who doesn't have evil thoughts and evil words right there. But you
looming constantly.
Yeah. So the spiritual battle of our life is a battle for our thoughts. It's our mind. And then the thoughts, we have a will and we choose what comes out of our mouth. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed
by the renewing of your mind.
That you may, so it's an ongoing process, right? It's not a once, boom, and then that's it. God's Holy Spirit's in me and I'm clean, so now I'll never sin again. that really is not a reality for anyone I know, except dead people. Absolutely dead. I mean, they're not just dead in spirit, they actually fall over dead. They never say anything bad, but they don't say anything good either. They just kind of lay there till you do something with them. So just the rest of us got to struggle with bad thoughts and good thoughts.
Yeah, and it is the most, it's a very powerful thing, your voice, your words, to build up or to tear down.
Is it not the most powerful thing that you have control over?
Yes. The Bible says so.
Well, and none of that, think about your relationship with your wife.
Or your kids.
Or your kid, for you, kids for me, grandkids, friends. Everything depends on communication.
When I'm reading this, back to this philosophy book I'm reading, this idea that most of what it is to be human is invisible outside of you expressing yourself. I mean, you have facial expressions and bodily expressions, but most importantly, your words express your thoughts. And without your words, what you're thinking is invisible to other people. So your words, just like in the beginning was the Word, and it's through Jesus, the Word, that God the Father is expressed most perfectly. So he's the expression of God the Father and his will.
Oh yeah.
The same way as like your words, what you let out of your mouth is the expression of what you think and who you are, which you tied in well, I think, in the sermon of like who you are is now in Christ. Christ is in you. Holy Spirit's in you.
So let's think about thoughts for a second. If there are people who are materialists, or what's another word for a materialist? Is there another word?
Yeah, atheist.
Well, atheists generally are. The only things that exist are things that you can ingest with your senses, with your five senses. It's matter. There's matter.
Yeah.
But a thought is not matter. I think the best argument you could say is, well, it is, because there's an electronic jump in the neurons between the synapses in your brain, and if you open someone's brain and press on it, it produces certain thoughts. Well, that's still not the thought. That's just the physical either generation or response or however that works. A thought is not matter.
Yeah, I would agree. And in case you get in a discussion with somebody out there in the world on this idea of neurons and electricity in your brain being thoughts, it's a medium, just like color is a medium. Like a good analogy I like to think about is like a painting. Like you can use the same amount of red and blue paint or green paint. All the atoms are the same. But if you put it on a canvas in a certain way, it can express something very beautiful. And like the expression, the beauty in the painting is not found in the paint itself. It's
funny. I was reading, I thought it might be interesting to read. There's a book written by Marcus Aurelius and translated into English, I don't know, Wisdom. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get some wisdom from Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't that wise in my mind. I read about a bunch of his proverbs and I thought, really? One of the things he said was, if a flower has a beauty or something like that, the beauty's in the flower whether anyone ever sees it or not. And I thought about that, and I left, and I thought the book, and he's wrong. There is no beauty in a flower. It's just matter. The beauty is an abstract, invisible, untouchable, non-material idea that, as far as we know, the only one who can have that are thinking persons, whether they're humans, angels, or God.
Yeah, and I would say actually what he's touching on there, which he didn't acknowledge, is what he feels when he looks at a flower that he thinks is intrinsic to the flower. I think we would say is that's because it's a reflection of God's glory and creation in the flower, because God has a mind.
Yes.
God thinks that flower is beautiful, and therefore you intrinsically think it's beautiful, and you don't know why.
So I got a side-by-side.
Okay.
Right? Like
a vehicle.
Yes, needs the wrong word. Although it's really going to help around our house if I have something that I can carry stuff back and forth between my daughter's house and mine, and my wife, whenever she has to take stuff, instead of saying, Mike, could you carry this up for me? She could say, hey. So I started looking at golf carts, and I realized I don't want a used golf cart. And then I started looking, they have this battery, that battery. And then I realized, look, why not just get a side-by-side? So I ended up with one. And it was, then I saw which brand should I get? And I thought I can finance one for zero or close to zero at Kubota. Looked at theirs, and then I thought, there's John Deere Gator, but I don't buy John Deere because I always think I'm going to pay way too much. So I started looking online, and they said, why don't you look at the Honda, dummy? That's what they say online. So I looked at the Honda. I ended up buying it. So not only do I have something that's a utility vehicle, but it's fun. So I'm always giving my grandkids a ride. But I took my wife out. She doesn't like to go fast. And we went way up on the top of the hill at RADC Park near our house, which used to be called North Point in Slate Lick. And we went through a field that was just growing, and we stopped, and we had beautiful flowers all around us, just wildflowers. We just sat there and looking at them. And once again, an old idea hit me is if we hadn't pulled this out here, no one would have seen these beautiful flowers except God. And there's to say it like Jordan Peterson, it's not obvious that God isn't looking at those flowers, that he's not enjoying the beauty of what he made. But beauty is not a thing. It's you cannot touch it. Thoughts are not a thing. To be human is to be. I was lied to my whole childhood, and I thought we were really close to the animals. We're nothing like animals. Animals are not capable of the level of. We call it abstract, but that's just a word. What it means is it's not a thing. We think. Then when we're done thinking, or as an act of thinking, we put it into words and we say. And something is created that's never been. And if it goes into the head of another person, it has an effect on that human if he or she understands us. It's really remarkable to talk at all.
Oh, it's absolutely remarkable. It's
how we are like God.
It is how we are like God. And the materialists can't explain it, right? I mean, if you looked at words on a piece of paper, like in the Bible, like the meaning is not in the ink. It's not in
the paper.
It's not in the paper. It's not even in the arrangement of the ink. It's in the fact that a mind, a human, or God ascribed mening
to symbols and
to
words.
Symbols and words.
Well, we're calling them symbols, but we don't really know what they are.
Right. I'm not a Christian who's afraid to use the word magical or mystical. It's like
in a godly way.
In a godly way.
So this is a book. Okay. So the word book is a symbol of this. But the word word isn't. So, in other words, there's things that we can think that there is no physical. A word isn't a physical thing. You write it and you call that a word. No, that's actually a writing of the word. It's a hieroglyphic of some kind. But a word is not a thing, and yet we all know what it is.
Yeah, it goes back to this idea of expression. It's an expression of what in our modern, or actually not even modern, it goes back a long time, this idea of rationality. But again, like you said, these are all just ways we're trying to make ourselves feel more comfortable with something we don't really understand.
So we should focus on the fact that it makes us like God, not like a God. I'm not saying that, but made in his image.
Yeah, image-bearing qualities.
So God, in the Bible, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it doesn't say how, it just says he did. But in Hebrews 11:3, it says, by faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God. So, and then it says, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. So there was no matter. God spoke and matter appeared. So which is greater, a word or matter? Well, if it's coming out of God's mouth, that's anthropomorphic. If God says it, it's God. It's word, right? So then he makes us. How do you know we're wicked? Well, we take what he gave us as a gift, the gift of speech, and we start to use it, and it doesn't take long. Do you realize we're pretty wicked? We're pretty wicked. And Jesus brings that out with this. if you're good, you bring good treasure out of your heart. If you're evil, you bring evil treasure, because it's from the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks. So Jesus takes this idea of the word and morality and puts them together. He says there is a moral being producing the words you produce. They have a motive, and it's good or bad. Now, I don't know how that translates to everything I say, right? And I could walk into a dark room and say, it's dark in here. Is that an evil man could say that? A good man could say that? But maybe there's a moral part of everything we say. There's a good or bad reason that's behind everything we say. I don't know what you think of that. But I've been thinking about words, and Paul gives us this great help. He says, conduct yourself with wisdom towards outsiders. Excuse me. Interesting that he used the term outsiders. Men, when you become a Christian, you join a club that's called Inside. So that's kind of cool. I'm in the Inside Club. There's people outside, those who don't agree with us. So when I'm around them, I need to conduct myself with wisdom, making the most of every opportunity. He doesn't go into detail on that. If he was here for conversation on this, I'd say, could you tell us a little bit more about what you meant there? But then he says this right after. He says, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should respond to each person. I'm in Colossians 4:6, if you're wondering. If you had to, you do, we're called to obey this. So when Paul says to you, let your speech always be A, with grace, and B, seasoned with salt. What do you think he means? With grace, seasoned with salt. And this may not be to outsiders, because he's given a bunch of commands at the end of Colossians. He could be saying in general, I'm tying them together, but they may not go together. But I'm sure it would make sense if you're conducting yourself wisely towards outsiders. It has to do with your speech. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, so you will know how you should respond to each person.
Well, graciousness is
unmerited favor,
recognition
unmerited
of
favor.
Yeah, recognition of unearned gifts or unmerited favor. So, and if you're speaking to outsiders, recognize that all the favor you have is unmerited. So you don't merit any more favor than they do. Mm-hmm. So speak to them as though you would like someone to speak to you, which we see in other places in the Bible. So be kind.
Gracious. Instead of gracious, kindness, criticalness, all these thoughts rush into my head.
Right. And then the saltiness.
What's kind and critical? Keep going.
Well, that's where the saltiness comes in, I think. Is
seasoned with salt.
In the other very famous verse, right, which is Jesus saying if salt loses its saltiness, it's cast aside,
worthless,
and gets trampled underfoot. Saltiness, to me, seasoned with salt means that it's valuable because it presents the truth. I think of saltiness being connected to truth, which is Jesus. Jesus is the truth. It's personified truth. So you want to be kind, even if you're being critical, in illuminating the truth to people, but you never want to give up the truth part or you'll lose your saltiness. So
salt has and seasoned with salt. I think you use two metaphors. Jesus said that you're the salt of the earth, and Paul said seasoned with salt. I think Paul sounds more like food, and Jesus sounds more like preservative of food, but still a preservative. The fact that they use metaphors to describe how to use your tongue, again, is a huge compliment to the human race. I'm going to give you a metaphor, and you figure it out. As in Matthew's version of our text that we had gone through in Luke a couple weeks ago in a sermon, he says, the good man brings out of his good treasure what is good, and the evil man brings out of his evil treasure what is evil. Then he says, but I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for in the day of judgment. Now there's a scary thought. Mm-hmm. So this careless word would not be the same as gracious or seasoned with salt. These are idle words, useless words, lazy words. You just threw that out there thinking it doesn't matter. I really hope he's talking about people who are outsiders in sin, and that all my careless words are washed away in the blood of Christ, like everything else I did wrong. I'm going to assume that. And then he says, for by your words you'll be justified, and by your words you'll be condemned. Now, he'd introduced the idea, do not judge, lest ye be judged. And so we're never to judge anybody at any time. And we never are, unless it's the millennium and God tells us, judge this person. And by judgment, we're not here to condemn. That's what I'm talking about, spiritual condemnation. But our words will condemn. So when you think of the alignment of our souls, morality, right? He says, goodness comes out of your mouth. Your words are lined up with your morality, and your morality proves who you are. Your own words will condemn you, or your own words will justify you. I'm not sure I mean anywhere close to plumbing the depths of those ideas. Anyway, where do you find yourself most having trouble with your words? Is it angry words, accusing words, critical words, complaining words, lying words?
Yeah, it's angry and critical, and I would say
ungracious words.
It slips out mostly in this is a sneaky word, but if you're married, you know this word, tone. I might bridle the exact selection of words that if you were to write them without punctuation on a piece of paper, they might sound fine until they're expressed vocally in a way that makes them not super gracious because of the style in which they're presented. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And that's where I struggle the most is when.
So tone, when communication, we don't know the percentage, but there are all kinds of communication studies that tell you the vast majority of what we communicate is nonverbal. People take nonverbal to mean body language. That's not what that is saying. Nonverbal is anything besides
the content of the words,
the precise meaning of the words.
Correct.
And that's why you can say, oh, thanks a lot. And you say, well, he just thanked you a lot. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
He just
didn't
told
thank
me
you at all.
He just told me, I'm not happy with you at all. I can't believe you did this. And someone could say, no, he said thank you a lot. No, he didn't.
Right.
The nonverbal part is the speed you say something, those tones, magical things you put on it. Yeah. And so, cause they communicate a lot. And they communicate what's in our heart. So God does want us to control our words, to think, how would Jesus do this till it becomes habitual? I think you mentioned when I first got saved, I was working on a landscaping crew, 3 of us in a truck every day, and
old boys.
We pulled mowers off the back. You pushed them back then. We didn't have those cool 0 turns. And we literally push mowed, bagged every bit of grass and charged a lot of money to people. And there were 3 of us, and 2 of us did that, and the boss got to do the weed eater. And then we'd bag up or put the grass in buckets and throw it in the truck. We'd come home with a big thing of grass. And it was hard work. And all we did all day was talk when we were in the truck. And the F word was the favorite word.
Just rolled off the tongue.
As a noun, verb, adjective, adverb, it was the subject, it was the object, and I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, and that's where it gets me. That if we're talking about that struggle in my life, that one's just plain and simple laziness. I think it's
it was hard to get rid of for me.
It's hard.
I remember I had a girl in my car then, and I was giving her a ride. She was from work. She wasn't my girlfriend or nothing, and we literally went like 1 or 2 blocks, and she wanted out of the car. I'm like, why? She says, I cannot stand your language. I'm like, F her. That's what my mind was thinking at that time, right? I was so insulted that she was so insulted. But I guess I had let myself go. as a young man. So when I did get saved, finally, I said, I get up every morning and say, I'm not going to cuss now. And no one told me, you shouldn't talk like that. And so I'm not going to say it at all. I wouldn't make it 10 minutes with those guys before I'm cussing again, day after day. Then one day I had a breakthrough and I said to myself, the only way you're going to pull this off is if you don't say anything at all unless you want to stop and think out the words exactly, then say them. So I went a full day doing that.
Ooh.
It was like magic, changed my whole life.
And that's what I meant about the laziness thing is
it changed my whole life.
If you grow up in the era where they're not really culturally that bad anymore.
No, they weren't culturally to any of us.
Specifically
here's the
my
bad
age
part,
group.
though. So after that day, I would get in the truck with these guys, and I wouldn't cuss, and they'd be talking, and they were annoying as crap. I wanted to get out of the car, too. I'm like, I've just ruined myself for this job. These guys... you kiss your mother with that mouth? I'm like, I don't want to hear it.
Well, I don't get offended. I don't get offended by potty mouth anymore. It's just
it was bothering me.
You start to realize that what you've done is you've taken this collection of words and you've made them meaningless. They mean it's any way to be expressive. I'm going to use it to express any number of emotions instead of trying to find a better way to express how you're feeling or your disappointment. Or
I know we got a question on this in our Ask the Pastor, but when it comes to cuss words, I'll tell you, we have become such a coarse and rude society. And I'm not saying myself included as far as the kind of things we'll talk about. We Christians have to be more and more careful because it used to be just the guys. Now girls are just have the worst potty mouths, and they just say the worst things. And I got a feeling it has something to do with rap music, but I ain't sure. Anyway, let me give one more text. It says in Proverbs 18:21, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." There is a positive side too, though. We're looking at what you shouldn't do, but what should you do? Where does your speech, when you're seasoning it with salt, give me the positive side of that. How does that look in your life? Or someone else's, if you can't think of yourself.
I was not prepped for that. Positive side. Well, you said this from the pulpit, the stage.
Well, no fair quoting me, but okay, I'll give you this one. This is your cheat.
If you get in the habit taking that extra split second to think about what's going to come out of your mouth, and is it going to be edifying? Is it going to be building up or tearing down? You'll find it makes you think of all sorts of things. It makes you
it does.
It makes you catch your own fallenness
and think of good things.
And it makes you it instructs you in thinking of good things. If you say good things, if you say thankful things, gracious things, if you express gratitude and not griping, you end up being more positive, more thankful.
And people want to be around you.
And people want to be around you. And it's a weird chicken or the egg thing, but if you catch yourself and only express the positive, you'll actually start thinking more positively.
As a man thinks in his heart, so he is. And one of the strategies I used when I was younger, trying to change my language, was to think in positives and negatives, right? Positives. If somebody said something to me, I'd think, I see this minus sign coming out of their mouth. That's a negative. And I would think, now I'm going to answer or not answer. Am I going to give him or her another minus sign, or am I going to give her a plus sign? And I started getting in the habit, and I try to do that still. I practice a lot on strangers because I'm the guy who almost always will talk to a stranger if you give me enough chance. And so I'm always talking with cashiers, whether they like it or not.
Well, I've gone to restaurants with you, waitresses, bartenders,
yes,
waiters.
I'm always trying to give them plus signs. And sometimes it's hard. It becomes a challenge. I think I actually ended up with my wife partly because of this desire to cheer people up even before I was saved. Because she would be grumpy, this girl I worked with, and she was cute. And I'd just poke at her. I'd be telling her funny things, trying to get her to smile. But now I'll go to a cashier will say something negative. I'll say, "How you doing today?" Give them a smile. I'll say something negative. "My back hurts." Okay. minus sign comes out. What am I going to say? I try to plus sign it, right? The first time I see my wife for the day or one of my grandkids, I try to plus sign them.
That's an interesting thought. I like this thought.
Yeah, and then find anything positive to enjoy about him or her,
Or the day, or
yeah, and just give them a plus sign. And normally it sets things on a better course.
well, that's why I want to go to James 3,
All
which
right.
is one of my favorite power of the tongue texts. The whole first half of James 3, he uses 3 different metaphors for the power of your tongue. He uses fire.
We call it far.
Far. He uses the bit in a horse's mouth, which you brought up on stage, and he uses the rudder on a ship. And all 3 of those metaphors could be either positive or negative.
If anyone does not stumble what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body as well. Now, if we put bits in the horses' mouths, that's one you said, so they obey us, we direct the entire body as well. Look at ships, although they're great, they're driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder. That's 2. And then the third, a tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. This makes you want to cut it out of your face when he says this part. The tongue is set among our members, and it defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of... Wow, that's rough. Anyway, go on. I just wanted to read this.
Yeah, well, it says, how great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. So if you think about the power of a horse, before we had internal combustion engines, the horse was our force multiplier. It's how we plowed fields and did agriculture and got across states and settled the West. And if you can control a horse appropriately, it's a very valuable thing. A ship, while it might be driven by the winds as its primary force of locomotion, you don't always want to go the exact direction the winds are blowing. You need that rudder to get to the destination you're trying to get to. Or a fire, like think of how powerful yet dangerous fire can be if you can control it, like in an engine or in a furnace.
It's fine.
It's fine and it produces much value and good. But if you're not careful and let it out of its appropriate bounds, it can burn down, in James's analogy, your whole being. So I think all 3 of those things, when controlled appropriately, are very powerful tools to aiding you in getting where you want to go. Or
it's amazing that he gives 12 verses towards the tongue.
Yeah, I mean, it's half of the chapter.
Very serious. Controlling what we say. So some people speak a lot and some people speak a little. And that's all there is to it. I think if you speak a lot, it seems more dangerous to me.
It's more opportunity to mess up.
And more opportunity to put those plus signs out in the world.
You're playing with fire more.
Yeah. And the Bible says that teachers have to watch out. When you're teaching the Bible, you're held to a higher standard. And I don't think that's about... I think that's about something mystical. Let me say it that way. I don't think it's about making sure you're always serious and stern and only say. I think it has to do with getting it right. Are you in alignment with the Holy Spirit, with God, and getting it right? I think that's what matters. Okay. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. Your tongue is a powerful thing.
It's a powerful thing, and it can bless. Oh, it can bless. One area where I don't get in trouble, but my wife thinks I'm going to get in trouble. One of my daughters gets a little nervous, thinks I am. But I tell women they're pretty. Or I tell them I like that dress. You know why I do it?
Because it makes them feel good?
No, because I think they're pretty or I like their dress. I'm just being an honest man. And people say, well, you can't say that. It's me too. They're going to think you're trying to pick them up or you're a dirty old man. Why? Because we live in this crazy, over-sexualized... I appreciate someone's clothing or beauty and often have zero negative thoughts about it. In fact, if I'm having this a sexual thought, I don't say anything at all.
Right, because you're bridling your tongue.
I'm bridling my tongue. Sometimes I think if someone looks pretty, it would sure be nice if someone told her. And
caution you guys out there.
Yes.
Some of us are better at this than others. Mike might be naturally gifted. You know who I thought
Maybe
of?
I'm not. Maybe everyone says stay away from that guy.
You know who I thought of? And
If
he
Cruiser
might not
would
listen
do
to
this more often, if you would tell women they were pretty, they'd all of a sudden they'll stop. They'll
Well,
look
you gotta
at
be careful. Some of those guys out there, if they
Cruiser,
try
do you
this,
have a
they're
mic today? He has no mic today.
they're going to come off like a creeper because some of us just not gifted in this way. But Eli Harvey goes to a different church. Many of you guys know him out there. He's the son of Mike Harvey, who's been on here. He's the best I've ever met at this. He can say, oh, you look beautiful today, or I love your hair, or like to women, and it's just always received well. It's his demeanor, never threatening. It just always comes off perfect.
Well, I mean, I don't pursue other women. I just don't. I have a wife. I like my wife. We've broken each other in. We're getting old. We're happy with each other. I'm not looking for another one. Maybe if you stare in their eyes and say, "Oh, you're so lovely, dear." I mean, that's a little bit different. I feel like
that's a lot of bit different.
I feel like I'm a dad or a granddad to so many. That's the age difference. And sometimes older ladies, sometimes they look nice. Doggone it, they're trying to look nice. Tell them. I don't know. I have no advice to give to younger men or men my age. We might all get slapped and thrown in jail for how dare you tell me I'm pretty? That was a macro aggression and we're sending you to jail. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, you're ugly. How dare you tell me I'm ugly? That's an insulting thing for a pastor to say. I don't know what to say to you. Act like I'm not here. Okay, I'll act like you don't exist. He ignores me every time I walk in the church. It's hard to be a man these days. That's all I can say.
Even that's offensive. Right. Saying it's hard to be a man.
It's you can't do anything right. You can't do anything right. Yes. And that leads me to Taylor Swift. But I don't know if it's time to talk about Taylor.
Well, we want to get into our Bible study, right?
Yeah, and then we'll talk about Taylor Swift.
All right, so we're going to jump ahead to Luke chapter 8. So we were just at the end of Luke 6 as far as the sermon series goes. And now in our study, we're jumping ahead. Luke 8. Verse 11, we're on a new parable. So last week...
We just finished that one, right?
Well, we finished the parable of the sower.
Yes.
And so immediately after the parable of the sower is a similar parable, parallel to... the
parable of the lamp.
Lamp in the basket.
So before you talk about a lamp, our minds might go to a lamp for us. Think culture with no electricity. So now all of a sudden... and the lamps are therefore not made of electricity. They are mostly clay bowls because everyone can afford clay. Clay is very cheap. You can make your own and dry your own. And it doesn't take much. It takes a hole for a little bit of oil, if you can find some kind of burning oil, and a little cloth wick to lay in it, and you light the end of the wick, you've got a lamp. So if it's dark, which it happens every night, you can see if you're still awake, if you're not in bed. And that's the only way you could see at night or in the dark. And everyone's house got dark because they didn't have any lights. So a lamp was very important. The oil for your lamp was very important. It was precious. It's hard to come by. You had to find some source of oil. And
also has calorie value. I mean, Fat's hard to come by.
You could eat it or you could light it on fire.
Right.
Those are the two things.
So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, so a lamp is a valuable little commodity. It didn't have to cost that much, but it was still precious to have it. And it said no one after lighting a lamp covers it over with a container. You're wasting it, right? I don't think this here is about the worry of the container catching on fire, although certainly that would be bad. The point is you don't light a lamp for the purpose of stopping it from making light. Or he puts it under a bed, but he puts it on a lamp stand so that those who come in may see the light. And if you've ever been in a tent on a dark night and you pop open a light, if you can hang it from the top, it lights the whole tent. If you've got it down by your bedspread or whatever, you can't see as much. It's a very simple idea, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's why we put all of our lights in the ceiling, mostly.
Yes, that's right. So Jesus has given another very simple parable. This is just nobody's so dumb as to not understand this, he's saying. And then he says, because nothing is hidden that will not become evident, nor secret that will not be known and come to light. So now he's switching the use of the word light from the light of a fire to knowledge. Did you see that movie made there, Will?
Yeah, is it fair to say most places you see light, most, maybe not all, light is illumination of knowledge. It's revelation. It's
both, right? Yes. It's always, yes. I what you're saying when you say most places, you mean in the Gospels.
In the Gospels.
Yes. Yeah. So it's knowledge. And it's also almost the spark of life, right? Jesus is the light of all men. And so there's knowledge, light, life, goodness. But if it's a secret and it comes to light, that's not always such a happy moment.
Often not, depending on the secret.
And nothing is hidden that will not become evident. So when we think of all the things have you ever said something and it came out and you thought, oh, that was bad, but nobody heard it, especially whichever, you're like, oh, I'm so glad she didn't hear that. I'd have been in trouble.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm sure you don't. You ever done anything that you hope nobody finds out? Well, it says here, nothing is hidden that will not become evident. I don't think that's a proverb. It could be a proverb saying generally, as they say, truth will out. Truth will out it will out itself, right? It'll come out. This seems everything is going to become evident, nor will any secret that will not be known come to light. So if you take those two together, what's he talking about in verse 16? How does it relate to 17? When he says no one lights a lamp so that it doesn't light stuff up, he puts it in a place where it lights everything up. Therefore, he says, or for this reason, everything that's done will be seen. Who's lighting this lamp he's talking about? In this particular case, it seems like he's saying God is going to light a lamp on you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay in the verse and not bring
other thoughts
in from, but yeah, I mean, so you had John the Baptist at the beginning of this book telling everybody to repent, and then Jesus showing up talking about obedience right preceding this. It's almost as if Jesus is the lamp that God just lit, and like all your deeds are going to come to light. Like, quit pretending you can do bad deeds and not repent of them, and quit doing them.
Yes. Well, that's in there.
Because the time is now. It is the time that the bridegroom's walking amongst the people. I don't know. I'm stretching maybe, but
well, you're trying to take the big view of the book. I think the idea that everything that's ever been done will be seen.
Your deeds are going to be read in front of you.
I think when this happens, and how it happens, I don't know, but that those who are covered by the blood of Christ, there are other promises that we have to figure into this. Your sins I cast as far away as the east is from the west, which is a long way. If he had said north is from the south, we'd be in trouble, because north and south have a way of meeting at the poles.
Yep.
But east and west never meet. I don't know how we figured that out, but it's true. You ever figure that out? How come we didn't think of that with north and south? Find a way for them just to keep going round and round. But east is always east, west is always west. And so they go, he throws our sins into the sea. So even I think our wicked deeds will be glorious, for they will be under the blood of Christ, taken away from us completely. And so they're for the glory of Christ. Look what God has forgiven. Look how we've been made new. But if you don't know Christ, you try to make yourself look pretty good, then someone puts the light on and everyone sees the cockroaches.
Yeah, there's going to be a spotlight and a magnifying glass.
Yes. So then he says, take care then how you listen. Take care of how you listen to who? Him. He's been preaching. And then he says, for whoever has, to him more shall be given. Whoever does not have, even what he thinks he has shall be taken away from him. This is judgment day. This is reckoning. He doesn't mention it. He alludes to it, but it's definitely pointing all the way to the end. There's a reckoning coming. There is going to be a test. All right. There will be a test. Is there going to be a test on this? Yes. What's the subject? Your life. And if you have something, when God puts his light on you, he goes, that's good. You get more. You get more. But if he looks and I've put the light on and you thought you were pretty good, but we're looking at your sins here and there, guess what? You lose everything. Even what you think you have will be taken away from him. There is no universalism in the Bible. There is no everybody gets saved. There is no God is love and everybody gets saved. There is a fearful expectation of the loss of all things in some sense, or the undeserved reward for what you did once it's all known.
Yeah, and I'm fearful right now of misinterpreting this parable, but what's coming to my mind, so I'm interested to get your critique on this. Take care then how you hear.
Right.
For the one who has, more will be given, and from the one who has not, even what he thinks that he has will be taken away.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, it's making grace come to my mind. Like the one who has grace, more grace will be given.
That's right.
And the one who doesn't have grace, even what little grace he thinks he has, like he thinks God's giving him a pass on some of these things because maybe he's not experiencing the
trials,
the negative consequences
he
in
dies
this world.
A happy, rich death.
Right. Even what he thinks he has will be taken away. The grace he thinks he had in this life.
You have it. You'd better watch yourself. I think it's exactly the direction he's going. And that fits with what he says back in chapter 6, when he speaks of in this world, you have one thing, the rich. If you think your riches are good enough, you've already been paid. I'm thinking of Bill Belichick right now.
Why Bill Belichick?
Because he's 72 years old, and he's cussing like a sailor, which is, I'm not saying about the cussing, but it shows where his heart is. I don't think it's with Christ.
Really? I didn't expect him to be a swearer.
Oh, he is. He is one of the most successful men in America, and in a way that men admire. He's perhaps the greatest coach in the history of NFL. He's up there. And yet, he's dating a 24-year-old girl. I know age doesn't matter.
Man, I am so out of the loop.
I know. And
24.
Which means, I don't know how old should be the separation between a man and his wife, and people can argue that all they want. But if doggone it, 50 years ain't it, I don't know what is. That is a granddaughter age. And it's there's something strange about it. But so here's this very successful, very rich, very well-preserved man who has a very good life and is dating, I guess, the woman he should have dated back when he was 24. But now, and guess what? I don't think he knows Christ.
Did you think he did before?
No, but here's the point. You take your average guy who doesn't know Christ, and he'd say, I'd love, when I'm 74, to be in his shoes. I'm one of the most accomplished men in the world. I have all this money, and I got a beautiful 24-year-old.
He's got some grace of God on his life.
There is graces in his life. And maybe, hopefully, I'm hoping that 24-year-old doesn't love him, but she's a gold digger, because I hate to say it. That way she gets something out of this, because you shouldn't date your grandfather. But he's just too old. But if he doesn't get saved, even what he thinks he has will be taken away. But you take someone like Cruiser over here, he hasn't got the money, hasn't won any Super Bowls, and he has no 24-year-old girl.
Wah, wah, wah.
But when the light is on, we will see that the Lord says, this is the one I favor, and he will be given glory forever. And he still might get a 24-year-old girl. That's right. Well, how old are you, Cruiser?
22.
He's 22. So if you're 24 is within range for him.
Oh, he's looking for a 24-year-old.
Maybe you should call Belichick. Tell him you'll work for him and help him do his podcast. When he dies, marry his girlfriend. You'll get his money. You'll get his girl. Anyway, that has nothing. Anyway, but yes, let's finish out this little section.
I was going to say something. But
Well, we just judge people wrong. That's my whole point. In our society, we judge someone to be just, he's got it all, when he may not have anything at all. Even what he thinks he has will be taken away from him.
Well, that's what this context, right? Hermeneutical principle, or fancy way of saying things you should pay attention to and read in the Bible. These Sermon on the Mount texts, like it's all one big sermon.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we're reading in Luke 8, it's
Fits with Luke 6 and Matthew 5, 6, 7.
right. It's pertinent to remember Luke 6. It's all in the same flow.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of the upside down kingdom, that he starts in Luke 6 or Matthew 5 or 6, depending on where it splits. I'm trying to remember.
It's 5.
5, end of 5.
5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's all one big sermon. So you have to put it in the same context.
Yeah, God's word all fits together, and there's wisdom in listening to Jesus and thinking it through, not just reading it and letting it go. So let's finish out this. It seems to take a little turn. I don't know how this connects to what goes before, but here's a little vignette. Verse 19 of chapter 8. His mother and brothers came to him, and they were unable to get him because of the crowd. Now, by the way, he had a mother named Mary, and he had brothers. These were... there's no reason to think these are his half-brothers or his step-brothers. No, they are his half-brothers, not his step-brothers. There are some who have tried to deify his mother and call her the queen of heaven and all this silliness, and deify her and say she never had sex. I don't know why that is part of the deity, but she did, and she had other children. And they were unable to get to him because of the crowd. By the way, there's a place in Mark where it says, and his family thought he was out of his mind.
Yeah, they're telling everybody he's crazy.
Yeah, can you believe that? Now, I don't know if that's what's happening here. I don't know if this is the exact same time, but nevertheless, they're trying to get at him and they can't get at him. And it says it was reported to him, your mother and your brothers are standing outside. Wait, this is, Mom wants you, Jesus. James is out there. He had a brother named James. Mom wants you. I'm not coming. Mom says now, but he doesn't come. It says he answered and said, my mother and my brothers are these who hear the word of God and do it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it's a powerful one for me. I mean, whether right or wrong, I always took it to be the same occasion, because
I should look that one up.
Isn't that in the other gospel where you get Jesus saying like,
I don't remember.
You have to hate your mother and brother.
Yes. Yeah, that's in there too, but that's not the insane part.
It's not the same.
What is it?
Occasion?
I don't remember.
Well, true family, you see in multiple places in the Bible, is adoption by God to be heirs with Christ, to be brothers with Christ, and adopted into the eternal family. So that's what this phrase always reminds me of, and it's of great solace to me, as one who does not necessarily get along with his siblings.
It said
on account of Jesus.
It's from Matthew. It's in Mark 3. It's a different section. He said he came home and the crowd gathered to such an extent that they could not even eat a meal. and his own people, it says his people, heard, and they went out to take custody of him, for they're saying he lost his senses. So we don't know if that was his mom or not. It was his own people. In this case, though, he does seem to say, yeah, if Will hears the word of God and does it, then he is my family. He's not saying he's my mother. He's obviously not being literal there. He's not saying he has come out of my mother's body. But it also does, I think it goes the other direction, and it equalizes us with Mary and his brother, let's say James, who wrote one of the books of the Bible. It puts us on the same level. This is, I just have to come back. We had a Catholic thing last week. I just want to point this out. Jesus does not have the same view of his mother that the Catholic Church has. He just doesn't. He doesn't look at her as sinless. He doesn't look at her as a virgin forever. And he doesn't look at her as the mother of God, just the mother of him, the man, Christ Jesus, who is God. And, that was the old story about Jesus in John, or in the Gospel of John. It says there was a woman taken in adultery, and they threw him down before Jesus and said, this woman was taken in adultery. The law says she should be stoned. What should we do? He leans down, he writes something in the sand. We don't know what. And then he stands up, or then he looks up and says to everybody, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And all of the people, or none of them do it. And then all of a sudden the crowd parts, and this little woman comes with a great big rock and drops it on the lady, and she dies. And Jesus says, "Oh, Mom." So that's a Catholic joke, because they actually taught that Mary is without sin. I want to be very clear. Nothing in the Bible says Mary was sinless. And here, Mary is even not being responded to by Jesus, because what she wants is not what he wants. I don't want to leave now. I'm not going to leave now. She doesn't have authority to take me because of her earthly position as my mother.
Yeah, I want to touch on something else here that I think about a lot. This gets a little heady, but there's a lot of people out there who don't have great relationships with their mother or father or their siblings. Maybe their parents, although you need to respect them and honor them regardless of how imperfect they are. Maybe they're really imperfect, treated you very poorly. And so you have this longing for these familial ties that everybody wants. I read this verse and others like it in the Gospels, and I think it's good to think about that all those relationship qualities that you long for, that maybe you don't get satisfied out of your earthly parental relationships or sibling relationships, like that God and your relationship with Jesus and God the Father in heaven is going to satisfy all those needs. Like that fatherly relationship, that love and warmth and ultimate care that you want and long for out of the relationship with your mother, or the blood tie, as we all talk about, like with your siblings, that blood is thick, and even if we don't get along, we always have our siblings back, that some people don't have. That's all going to be satisfied perfectly in your eternal relationship in the eternal family. It's always a good thing, I think, to remember when you're longing in this world.
Yeah, I think there's even more to it than that, and you get some of that back here too by joining the church. Jesus once said something, and a bunch of his followers left, and he looked at what was it? I can't remember where that's at, and because I didn't see this conversation going this way, but I need to find it. But Peter asks him, he says, "Look, we're staying with you. What do we get?" Do you remember that portion?
Yeah.
And he said, is that after the rich young ruler leaves? I'm going to look it up. And he says, if you follow me, not only now, but in the age to come, you'll have many more brothers and sisters. And look it up real quick. Wow.
Matthew 19.
Is that where it is? Did you find it?
And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters.
That's it. Yeah, read that portion.
Hold on 1 second. Matthew 19:29. Then Peter said to him, Behold, we have left everything and followed you. What then will there be for us? And Jesus said to them, Truly I say to you, that you who have followed me in the regeneration when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne, you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses, or brothers, or sisters, or father, or mother, or children, or farms, for my name's sake, will receive many times as much, and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. Is that what you were thinking of?
I think that is it. And it might, let's see.
That was NASB.
No, look at, even better, look at Mark 10:29 and his answer. And read that one, Mark 10:29. Very similar, little different answer. Mark 10:29. You there?
Mark 10:29. Again, same question from Peter. Behold, we have left everything and followed you. And Jesus said, Truly I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or farms for my sake and for the gospel's sake, but that he will receive 100 times as much now in the present age, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and farms, along with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life.
Okay, that is probably more complete on that first half. So what is the all those things you get now? It's the church. You didn't have brothers, but you came to the church. Now you have brothers, and you have older people, mothers and fathers, unless you're really old, in which case, well, stinks to be you. You should have got saved earlier. You're the father. But
you'll still get eternal life.
You still get eternal life and persecutions. So it shows that in this, it's our present age, an age of difficulty, but not being alone. And the church's value is that you're not alone. Yeah, it cannot replace having the dad you should have had in those formative years, or the mom, or the kindnesses you should have had in those formative years. Those hurts can leave a lifetime bend on you. I'm not going to say injury, because those scars can sometimes become your strength, but they can still hurt. But those hurts will be salved in the life to come. But for now, you're no longer alone. And that is a good part of what Jesus says in our text in Luke. So that's a good get. My mother and brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. And again, he reduces what he expects you to do when you hear him to hear it and do it, which means you have to think. You got to pay attention. You got to let it into your heart.
He even says, be careful how you hear.
Be careful how you hear, because remember, the seed that falls on the road is without understanding and stolen by the devil. Don't let anyone steal it. And so it comes back to simple things. We hear the word, we do it. We follow Jesus, and the rest takes care of itself.
It's a good word. It's a good passage today.
Yep.
All right. Well, moving right along.
Let's talk about
Do you want to talk about culture? Because we got some good questions too.
A quick Taylor Swift.
Is there such a thing?
Look, I never listened to a Taylor Swift song. Still to this day, I couldn't pick one out. My daughters and wife don't believe me. She's everywhere. You'd have known a song. They'll say, how about this one? That's what my daughter and wife sound like when they talk all at once. So they'll play a song and I'll be like, nope, don't know it. I don't listen to pop. I didn't like pop when I was young. I was trying to get away from it. I wanted to listen to Led Zeppelin, not Leo Sayers. That's for the old people. But the you can't get away from her. She's everywhere. She's ubiquitous. You watch football, there she is.
Not in my life.
You turn on social media, do you know who she is?
I do know who
See,
she is.
you can't get away from her. And then even my granddaughter is like, is it okay to listen to Taylor Swift? I'm like, Who has corrupted you? Her cousins, Taylor Swift, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I looked on.
Do you have a household band?
No, I just never listened to her. I don't care about her. No offense. I mean, if I'd care about her as a human, if she was sitting there, I'd be like, hey, Taylor, how you doing? But she's back up to her good deeds, because I saw on X that she is doing these concerts, and I played this little clip, and thousands of girls were singing, and there's a bad word, I'm not saying the bad word, the patriarchy. And then all the comments under was like, yeah, men stink and all this stuff. What do you make of that?
They don't even know what's good for them. So patriarchy just means father rule, right? Is it patria or whatever? I can't know the word. You know the word. It just means father, and then arche is rule. And so everybody wants good fathers. Like even Taylor Swift, like you might get mad going back to this idea of having a father who maybe didn't live up to what you would want him to live up to, but we all recognize that because we intrinsically know what we wanted him to live up to. We want a good father.
So feminism and Satanism are the same. Yeah, I said it. So is Marxism and Satanism. And so many other modern isms are really from the devil. And the heartbeat of feminism is we've got to stop God from ruling over us.
Because that's the ultimate patriarchy.
That's right.
You have God,
that's right,
Father.
And in the family, we got to stop men from ruling over us. We need to escape the rule of men. That's why abortion is the sacrament of the feminist, because children are the ball and chain financially and time-wise and emotion-wise that men use to trap women. This is the feminist worldview. It is satanic. It is evil. It has nothing to do with women's rights.
Well, and also in that first ruling, the decision cut the father out of the decision-making process. So the father had no...
What are you talking about?
Well, in abortion, it's a decision between the woman and her doctor,
which it really isn't. That's just such a big lie. No woman goes and says, dear doctor, and the doctor's like, yes, I'm an old country doctor and I care about you. I'm pregnant and I shouldn't be. What a problem. Let's privately commiserate. Now they go to a clinic, an abortion clinic downtown, because most abortion clinics are there for black genocide. So they're where the black people live. And that's just a fact. And you go down there and they walk in and they're treated like a number, and they don't even they don't get to know their doctor. Let me help you make this decision. They say, write a check, lady, and we will slay the fruit of your womb.
Well,
that's the truth.
And nowhere does the father have a say in it, as if it's not his progeny.
It's not his choice. Well, I was thinking you're going back to the garden where the devil went to Eve and cut the Adam out of it. And listen, patriarchy is a good thing in its place. Any ruler who is wicked is bad, be male or female. Matriarchy is good or bad, depending on who she rules and what sort of person she is. But the heavens are ruled by God the Father. You don't have to like or choose that he calls. No, you don't have to say, if I was God, I wouldn't be called Father, because that's not your place. He calls himself Father. Patriarchy. And in the home and in the church, men should lead. Of course, they shouldn't lead in a horrible way. But here we've got, and I don't think Taylor Swift thinks this deeply. I don't think she thinks very deeply at all, from what I can tell. She just thinks, oh, this is fun, F the patriarchy. And so she's Satan's little robot and doesn't even know it. And she gets this into teenagers. Teenagers shouldn't even think these thoughts. They can't even define the words. And I think this is how the wickedness, you make people sitting ducks for Satan. There's a place for male leadership. The reason our society is falling apart is because men aren't leading. Men are wimps, like her boyfriend, Kelsey. And I want to say Travis Kelsey is a wimp. He is a girl of a man. And I wish he was watching this podcast because I want you to know it. You are not acting like a man. And I can't call you out in private so no one can hear it. So I'm going to call you out in public. You're not much of a man at all.
Why do you say that?
Well, first, he sleeps with a woman he's not married to. But let's go farther than that. He goes on stage with her and helps her at this same clip take her clothes off. What kind of a man would do that?
Undress his
own
woman
girlfriend
and other people,
in front of other people. No, I don't think they get all the way down to naked, but the art is there.
One, not much left to the imagination, we would say.
Yeah, I think he's a wimpy man. I know he can beat me up. I know he's strong. I know he can catch footballs. But you know what I do? I marry a woman and I come home at night. And I do not parade my woman and treat her like a woman of the evening in front of a bunch of people. And I certainly don't let her walk around saying, F the patriarchy and having little girls go that way. And you don't stand in the way at all. You know why? Because you're a coward and a wuss. And period. If you were my friend, I'd tell you that to your face. But
man, if only we had a bigger.
And by the way, I don't
reach.
think that's mean to say that. I don't think I'm being sinful. Sometimes the wounds of a friend are faithful.
Oh, especially to dudes.
Guys, we tell you got to be honest with a person. And so what I'd say to Travis Kelsey is do better. Someone in your life must have taught you a better way to be and a better way to treat that young woman. You know, maybe she wouldn't be such a hopeless case if you treat her like a lady, and treat her with respect. Or maybe she would just kick you to the curb and say, I don't want a man who treats me with respect. I listen to rap music. Fine, whatever. Then go get yourself a good woman. But anyway, that's my thoughts.
So that was your cultural commentary.
Cultural commentary was a rant against Satan. I have nothing against Travis or her. I want them to go to our church. I want to be their friends. I want them to go ahead and yell at me for saying what I said, and then we can talk it out man to man. But he will never let me talk to him man to man. But the reason he's in public and people take an opinion of this in public, and the people listening to me are men. I want you guys to hear me. I want you to sit and think, well, if I acted like him, well, Pastor Mike thinks I'm a coward, right? And then I'm not being manly, right? Yeah, I want you to have that thought so that you won't act like him. He's a role model. He's right up there with, what's the guy I already mentioned? Belichick. He's got it all. He has nothing. He has nothing. Like anybody else who'll get old and dead, and all his fame and all his money and his ability to date the great
Taylor Swift, whose songs I've never heard, will mean nothing when the light comes on and you see who she really is. Men, act like men, for goodness sake. It's not about belching and how much beer you can drink. Yeah, or how many footballs you can catch or weights you can lift.
Yeah, maybe they wouldn't F the patriarchy if the patriarchy acted like a responsible, polite human being towards his woman. Anyway.
Amen to that.
I'm done ranting.
It's a good call to fathers, too. It's like...
there's so many good dads, too.
If you have a really good dad, you know, most people don't think F the patriarchy. You're like, my dad was... I like both my dads. I got two dads, kind of. I got a dad, and because I guess he didn't do such a good job with my mother because they got divorced. But he's doing great now, and I'm loving him, and he's been a good dad. But I ended up with a second dad. I got a stepdad, and really, you know, at the time it wasn't ideal, but right now it's worked out pretty good. It's kind of nice. All right. Anything else you want to rant about?
No, I'm done. I just didn't want to skip the cult. I want to talk about brain AI, but
I know that's like an hour.
It doesn't have to be.
We'll save it.
Oh man, I really want to talk about it, but I won't.
For you guys out there that want to prep yourselves,
don't get me started.
Okay. Well, you already heard it. He said it. You can look it up.
I just said the words brain and AI.
There you go. Just type that into the computer. We'll talk about it next time.
Yes.
But we're in the middle of a very long list of very good questions.
And we touched on some of them already.
We touched on one, which was bread and wine.
Well, wait, no. We touched on some already in this conversation because I think he talks about cussing in there.
He does talk about cussing, but that's further down.
Oh, okay. Well, where are we at?
So last podcast, We touched on communion. We touched on what communion means. We went into the text. We talked about, could we use milk and Oreos? Why can you use juice instead of wine? We touched on all that.
And then the following weekend, I met your friend.
Oh, yeah. And then you met my Catholic friend.
And I love them, like them.
My Catholic friends came to church. They're lovely people. They're coming again.
And he said the reason he goes to the Catholic Church, though, is he just loves the Eucharist, the living presence or something. And it drives me nuts, but I loved him, and I didn't say.
And you were very gracious to him.
Well, it wasn't time for a discussion of the matter.
Yeah, but he would do it.
I had to be seasoned with salt, and I'm not calling him out like Travis, but I would love to talk to him about it, because the whole idea that you worship by putting something in your mouth and swallowing it, and that somehow it's so foreign to the New Testament. Yes, there is a communion, but that Christ is actually present in the thing you eat, and you eat him.
Well, I want to be.
That is so foreign to the New Testament.
I want to be a little bit precise. It's not that putting something in your mouth and swallowing it is not worship. I mean, we are worshiping.
Sure, it's an act of worship.
It's an act of worship.
Well, just like bowing, getting down on your knees can be an act of worship to pray.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there's something holy about
the worship
dirt
is in
your
here.
knee hits.
Yes.
And the idea of transubstantiation, that a priest has the authority to change bread and wine into real body and real blood, the real presence of Christ, is not in the Scripture anywhere.
Okay.
And yeah,
I don't want to rehash it, because we hammered that.
Oh, I'm done hammering. Well, bring something else up.
All right.
On it.
Well,
get moving.
Along
pal.
with further rituals in the church, let's talk about the tithe. So this young man, I'm going to read his question. The tithe was first seen in Genesis with Cain and Abel, before tithing was even a law, specific law. He says, some people today say that we do not need to tithe because they claim it is not in the New Testament. My questions are these. Why do we tithe? Does the money have to go to the church, or could it go to a different charity? Then also, as a tither myself, is it okay to be disappointed or frustrated with the way the church might spend its money on different things?
Well, that's a lot of questions.
I know. Well, this is just bullet point number 2 of like 5. So tithing. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay,
Why do we tithe?
Why do we tithe? Okay,
and it's not in the New Testament.
Okay, so there's a lot to. That's a great question. Actually, it's a perfect question. I love it. The answer is not.
You're getting more Trumpian every day.
That's a beautiful question. That's a beautiful question. It's a great question, and I've answered this one in my last sermon. I had the greatest answer. It was a perfect answer that I already gave to this question. It was a beautiful answer. Back when I used to preach on this, I gave the most beautiful answers. Then Will preached on it, and it just went downhill. But I gave beautiful answers.
Okay, so why do we tithe, and then what? Not in the New Testament? Are we required to do it?
He's close to right, and I know what he means when he says Cain and Abel tithed. Although the tithe isn't there, they offered of their first fruits. So first fruits. So worship from the very beginning required giving.
Of material value,
sacrifice. And that is all the way up into, even when you think of your praises, Hebrews, well, there's something called a praise offering in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Hebrews says that the fruit of your lips is an offering. So you can't separate worship from giving. Now, there's a getting part, right? We get to commune with God, but as a human, we have to give. Why that is, I don't exactly know. And I'm sure there's some people who've probably written something good that I need to read. And if you have it, recommend it to me. But we have to give of ourselves, and now everything we've received. So the way David once put it, I put right back in your hand. You gave it to me, I put it right back in your hand. The hand it gave me, I gave it back. One time David was going to sacrifice, and this guy said, well, I'll give you everything you need to sacrifice. And he says, far be it from me to offer God a sacrifice that costs me nothing. So that isn't in the law. that it has to cost him something, just that he has to do it. But he says, no, it has to cost you. So with Cain and Abel, one gave his firstborn, one gave the first portion of his fruit. Was it 1/10 of his fruit? Maybe, but it was the first portion, or the best portion, or it was supposed to be the best portion. And then we get the tithe appears with Abraham. He tithes. He gives 1/10 of everything. Why 1/10? Well, a firstborn is easy. It's one complete animal. But when you're trying to quantify things, how do you do that? You don't. If you're giving of your wheat, you don't just give the first grain of wheat. That's like giving him nothing. It doesn't cost you anything much. You give him the first 1/10 of your whole entire field, or the product. So the tithe came. We don't know who Jacob tithed to, but we know when he had the dream of the ladder and the angels going up and down, he said, if God is God and he blesses me, I will tithe of everything I get. Who's he going to give it to? I don't even know. Was he just burning animals up or burning up the fruit? But the idea of if it costs you to worship is older than Moses. And Moses is the point where the law comes in. And God says, this is the law. And the law was for his people Israel, not even the whole world, just his people Israel. And it had not just one tithe, but several tithes in it. And that tithe began to feed. It also served not only to worship, and he cared about your heart when you worshiped. At one point, he said, I don't even want your tithe because your hearts are wrong. I think it's in Isaiah. He says, your hearts aren't right. The tithe I want is that you treat your workers right. You quit stealing. Then bring me your tithe. So get your heart right, then offer to me. So he wants your heart to be right. In Malachi, he yells at the people for stopping to the tithe. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse because you're robbing me.
And then you're about to start to say that after Moses, the tithe also practically is what funds the Levitical priesthood.
It funds the people whose job it is to run the worship. So the priests have a big temple, and in that temple, it always has to have showbread, always has to have oil. They always have to have stuff to make fire. They're always slaughtering animals. They all need all their tools. They need to be able to wash. Plus, they need to eat, and they need to be able to pay the rent on their house or whatever their bills are. They had to pay their own bills. So you're paying for the worship system out of your tithe.
And when they get to the promised land, they don't get their own land.
No, they're portion land with every tribe because they're to be sprinkled in every tribe. So if you're in the tribe of Judah, you're down by the sea, the Dead Sea. If you're in the tribe of who's way up to the top, I shouldn't have went there because I don't remember who's way at the top. If you're in another tribe, you're way at the top, up by Galilee. All the other ones, which are only Benjamin and Judah are down south there. So, but if you're in the tribe of Levi, you're sprinkled into every single tribe so that you can help them all worship and teach them and all these things. So you have to, the tithe preexisted the law, but now worship includes a practical application of furthering the worship of God. So then here comes Jesus, and everything in the Old Testament ritual seems to pass away. Now, to say the tithe isn't mentioned in the New Testament is close to true, but not completely true, because Jesus said to the Pharisees, woe to you Pharisees, you pay tithe of mint and rue and every kind of garden herb, yet you disregard justice and the love of God. But these are things you should have done without neglecting the others. He kind of said you should keep tithing. And in Luke 18, you have a guy who says, I fast twice a week and I pay tithes of all I get. And he says, good, keep doing that. And, but he doesn't. That's in a parable. But my point is, tithes do come in.
And they're never rejected out of hand.
Never rejected. But I do agree, though, that so much of the Old Testament's a shadow. So let's say we leave the law of Moses behind. We're now still in a time where does worship have to cost me?
Yes, your life.
Well, I guess someone could argue no. It doesn't have to cost. Yes, it says you give your whole life. That's right. Jesus says anyone who comes must die for me. So it's your whole life. What's Romans 1 say? What's Romans 1 say? Come on, man. 12:1. 12:1.
12:1.
Therefore, I urge you, brothers, by the mercies of God,
God,
to present your body a living and holy sacrifice.
You said Romans 1. I'm like, which
Romans
part of
verse
Romans
1? But living and holy sacrifice to God. Present your body a living and holy sacrifice to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. So it's worship to give all of yourself. So what is the example we had in Acts 2? We aren't told the tithe, and that is true. But in Acts 2, what we had was people sharing everything, right, with to take care of the needy among them. Okay, who did they bring the money to when they did that? Since this isn't the same as temple tithes,
the apostles.
They laid it, as it said, at the apostles' feet, which is symbolic language. You don't want a bunch of pennies all over your sandals, but they brought their money to the apostles.
And it's serious enough that Ananias and was it Phineas? Sapphira, they die.
The Ananias and Sapphira story is they decided to get wise, and the man of God gave them service as a smile for lying. Sorry, I was quoting PID, who none of you heard of. So what we had was there were people giving away, they were selling everything and bringing it to the apostles. So why should we bring it to the church? I'm going to answer that now. Yes, absolutely. Even if you don't like the way the church spends the money. Yes, absolutely. Why? Why should you bring it to the church even if you don't like the way the church spends the money? Because you haven't given it. And if you don't like the way that, in other words, I'm going to give it to the church, but they got to spend $50 on this, $20 on this, $60 on that, and $30 on that.
That's not giving it away.
You have not given anything to God, because instead you're keeping control of that. You used to just give the animal to the priest, and that's it. And the priest might give you some back on certain offerings, say you need to eat this portion, but many times you got nothing back, and he burn it all up. And that's it. You lose it. You give your temple tax, you give it to the priest. Some of these Pharisees were awful people, and they wouldn't treat your gift well. They would take more than they needed. But that had nothing to do with you. In fact, when a bunch of people were going to pay their dues, as well, their tithe, one guy gave a lot, and this one woman came up and gave all she had, 2 pennies or 2 coins, and Jesus said she gave more than all. So God is looking at her heart, because she gave out of her love and she gave out of her heart, and he's looking at that. So he looks at your heart when you give it. And you might say, well, what if I never like what my church spends the money on? Why are you in that church?
I was gonna say, then you might need to go to a church.
And if you can't find a church that you feel like you can trust, maybe the problem isn't the church, maybe the problem is you. I am the pastor of a church that handles the money you give if you go to Harvest, and I make fewer decisions over that than you might think. I'm on an executive elder team, and we're responsible for the budget, so I own the budget in the sense that, yes, I'm responsible for it, but I don't meddle in it much because I don't spend that much of the money. I figure if the other pastors and ministry leaders think they need it, and it's recommended by the executive pastor and the other elders who look closely at these things, I think, why am I going to judge what they do? Now, do they ever buy things I wouldn't buy? Absolutely. Do they ever spend it on ministries? I think, why did we spend it on that when we could have spent it on this? Sure, I do. Does that change my tithe? Not at all. Why? Because I'm not tithing to them ultimately. I'm tithing to God. I'm giving it to God.
And
it's arrogant for me to think I know better anyway.
That, and I want to go back to this idea that it's not a gift if you want to have strings attached. Like whether we're talking about tithing or like a gift to a friend, like you're not giving it away if you're saying, I'll give it to you with conditions. You must spend it in this way or this way.
That's right.
You're just directing.
More than that, you're controlling the person
you
gave it to.
Exactly.
If you write on it, must go to missions, you're telling the person you gave it to how they need to behave. And now, what should churches spend it on? Well, at least they should spend most of the money on what the Bible does. And that is for the care and continuation of the worship, including those who work hard at the worship, because that's what's in the Bible. Second, the poor in your midst, and that's not all the poor in the world, but that's literally other Christians who have needs, according to certain rules that are in the Bible for who gets what and how you get it. So that's going to extend to missions, of course, or other church plants, of course, and it extends to the cost of doing communal life together. So if you have a meeting place or a building, and it extends to that. Now, you might not spend money to carpet a certain room, but the leaders of your church say, we are going to spend money to carpet a certain room. Yeah, you might disagree. How lonely do you want to be? If you want to sit around worrying about where every one of your pennies goes, you won't even get along with your wife if you get married, trust me. She won't like you much. The giving and the heart are the important thing. Now, the other thing about giving at a church is you have a voice. You have the Bible. If you think they're spending it sinfully, you are free to walk up and confront the pastor and say, hey, can we talk about how you spend the money?
You can confront me.
Yeah, you can.
Leave Mike alone.
You can pick on me, and I'll listen to you, and I'll say, yeah, I think you might have a point. Go see Will. And that's how we work this out. But let's get back to a little more. Why tithe? As Will said, you got to give your life. So the earliest example we have is the very first Christians gave. Where do they give? To the local church. As Paul would later take collections that he would use for various reasons. One was to feed the poor Christians who were being persecuted in Jerusalem, and others was for missionary work for people who worked with him. He would never take any money himself because he saw himself as an evangelist who made that commitment. But he also said, but I have a right to it. And he also pointed out that Peter and his wife, yes, Peter had a wife, and all the other apostles and their wives, yes, they had wives, they received their living from the gospel. But he didn't. He put himself in a strange category. He said that your teachers, those who work hard at preaching and teaching, don't muzzle the ox. I am an ox. How much should a pastor get paid? People can argue about it. I would use the rule of thumb. It's not in the Bible. If you take 10 employed people of the same age who tithe, whatever that number is, that's your ballpark for your pastor. Now, I'd say of the same age because as we all get old, hopefully your pay goes up. So you can afford your life. But in any case, I'm not saying that's our law, but there's there's logic, and someone has to use some sort of logic on how to distribute the money. But anyway, they all brought the money into the church, and Ananias and Sapphira's story is good because it people were selling lands and giving them, and Barnabas sold a land and gave to help meet other people's needs, and that caused two people named Ananias and Sapphira to think, we want to sell some land too. Now, what was their motive? Good? It might have been initially good, but it quickly showed that it wasn't completely good because they wanted credit, I guess, from the apostles, or maybe everyone was saying, hey, Barnabas sold a land. He's awesome. Look how generous he is. And so Ananias and Sapphira said, well, probably Sapphira says, Ananias, how come you're not as generous as he is? And, well, do you want us to give all our money away? No, but maybe we can do something. So they sold some land. That was what her voice sounded like. And they sold some land, got some money, and they said, let's go give it. And they said, no, let's just give part of it. So they did. But they said they gave it to the apostles. They gave it to Peter, actually, and Ananias did all by himself without his wife. And he said, how much you sell it for, your land for? And he said, I sold it for the amount I'm giving you. He actually lied to him, even though he sold it for more. And then Peter got mad at him and said, oh, yeah? Well, then it's time for you to die because you just lied to the Holy Spirit. Okay, let me read this to you. Actually, a man named Ananias, his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property and kept back some of the price for himself and his wife, with his wife's full knowledge. Oh, they were in on it together. Make no mistake. And bringing a portion of it, he laid it at the apostles' feet. Again, that's figurative language. They weren't all just sitting there with their feet out, waiting for people to put money on it. And Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep some of the price of the land? Now listen to this. He says, while it remained, did it not remain your own? He says, it was yours. You didn't have to sell it. And after it was sold, was it not under your control? There's no communism here. Some people see communism in the Acts church. It's not there. Your property's yours. Do with as you please. He says, why have you conceived this deed in your heart? You have not lied to men, but to God. And as he heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last, and great fear came over all who heard it. His sin wasn't not giving all the money. His sin was lying to the apostles. And to lie to the church was to lie to the Holy Spirit. That's rough. And so he died. And then it said, now a time elapsed, and it says the men covered him up and they carried him out. And now there elapsed an interval of about 3 hours. His wife came in, not knowing what had happened. And Peter responded to her, tell me whether you sold the land for such and such a price. She said, yes, that was the price. And he said to her, why is it that you've agreed together to put the Spirit of the Lord to the test? Behold, the feet of those who buried your husband are at the door, and they'll carry you out as well. And immediately she fell down and breathed her last, and they carried her out and laid her beside her husband, and it said, in great fear came over the whole church.
As you would expect.
So what do we learn from this? One is,
Well, I want to, go ahead.
What you own is yours to use as you please. So it's going to be between you and God. And if you want to tell God, I'm not tithing, you go for that. But God plans to further his mission through the worshipful giving of his people. And he asks not for 10%, but for all of you, right? That's the change in the New Testament. Jesus says, I want all. Why not give me all? I want your life. I want your blood. I want your heart. I want all your own. I want your relationships. I want all your money.
I mean, I think of it's long in the day. I think it's in Luke, the young rich man who comes and says, I've followed all the law all my life. Oh, great, I'm righteous and all these things. And Jesus looks at him, can see his heart, and says, okay, one more thing. Sell everything you have.
And give it to the poor. And
come follow me.
And follow me. So the thing.
And he goes away sad.
He goes away sad. He says, one thing you lack. Which is interesting because his problem wasn't that he lacked, but was that he had an abundance. And Jesus said, no, you lack something. What is he lacking? He doesn't love God, he loves money. And he says, sell it all. It wasn't who he gave it to in that picture that mattered. He's saying, remove your problem. Your problem is you love your money. Sell it and you follow me. He wasn't saying you'll have nothing. Right now your money is in your way. Get rid of it all. Follow me. And the guy said, I'm not going to do it. And so he lost Christ. But the point is you have control over what you give to the Lord, and he wants you to use your brain and steward it. He wanted Ananias to. Ananias didn't have to give all the money. If he wanted to give some, he could. But the Bible says God loves a cheerful giver. So let's put these things together and see what we have. First, the tithe predates the law. Giving the first fruits predates the law.
Yeah, giving of the first fruits predates.
Right, both of them do.
Oh yeah, because
Abraham and Jacob did too. And Isaac. And so then also we have Jesus says give all. Jesus' people do give an example of giving way more than a tithe in the first church. They bring it instead of to the temple and the priests, they bring it to their pastors. They bring it to the elders. They bring it to the leaders of the church. We also have people begin giving regularly and weekly because Paul said, in your weekly giving, do this, and I'll pick it up when I get there. We also know that goes to supply the mission and the needs of the Christians in your midst.
And the leaders.
And so, with all that said, if you think you shouldn't give any of your money to God, fine. That's a whole nother category. You go for that. If you think, well, I'm free in Christ not to give anything, go ahead. You try to work out your selfish lifestyle with him. He'll judge you. I won't. That's your business. But if you're rational and see that this is God's plan for you, and it's his plan for me, for all of us, so we don't love money, and so we do supply the mission, you'll immediately start to ask, well, how much should I give? And the answer is all, but all is not always practical. Because if you give all, you have nothing. And if you have nothing, now you're needy. Look, he gave everything. Give the guy some clothes, for goodness sake. So now the church has to buy you clothes, or your family has to buy you clothes. Or family has to give you food. So we see that the scripture says, let him who steals steal no longer, but work with his hands so he has something to give to those in need. So there's this idea, the one who does not work, he should not eat. You should, if you are able, you should supply your own needs through your work. If you have a family, you should supply their needs. He says those who don't supply for their family are worse than an infidel. So you have those responsibilities. So part of your budget of using the Lord's money is to do what he said with it. That includes you feeding yourself, clothing yourself, getting yourself a place to live, and feeding your family. So then what do you do with the rest of your money, right? That's the question. Can you give it all to the Lord? Absolutely. You can give every cent away to the church. You don't have to, but you can. But you can also give some of it here, some of it there. Why would I argue for the tithe? Because the less than the tithe, if you're saying that the tithe predated the law, in the law, the tithe was higher than 10%, by the way, because there are a number of tithes. So, and then now the law is gone and God wants all. So now I'm going to give less than 10% to worship my Lord, as if the souls of man and the greed of man has changed. I say, no, that's your starting point. So here's what we teach at Harvest. If you don't agree, fine. But I think it's, and by the way, it's the example of the church throughout the ages too. You take the first fruit of your increase, and you give it back to God. And the way you do that with open hands is you bring it to your church, period. And then after that, you say, what do I do with the rest of my excess? And as Paul said, or Peter said, it's up to you. You could be like Barnabas, who just gives out of love so much to the church that they can do more. Or you can be like Ananias should have been and give a portion to the church and keep some for yourself. If you want to, you're free to do that. But you will answer to God for how much you love things. Jesus says you can't love God and money. So you have to steward it one way or another. So that my argument is you start with a tithe as a Christian, you go up.
Yeah, I would. I wholeheartedly agree with that. So I was going to explain the same thing. I'm glad you did. So yeah, the tithe isn't. It's first fruits. It's giving sacrificially. We think as pastors that the tithe is a safe place to start.
Yes, and you have to give it first.
And you have to give it
because
first.
if you don't give it first, you'll run out.
I used to play this game. I used to play this game with the government too. We always ask, well, do I tithe off my net because the government takes 30% or 40%, or do you tithe off the gross? Well, if it's the first fruits, am I actually giving to the government first? But that's a whole separate thing.
Actually, you won't get an opinion on that from me, because at times I've tithed on the net and times I've tithed on the gross. Why? Because I can't make up my mind.
It's a tough one. I felt personally convicted.
And at times, maybe I've grown in it. I think I've given more the older I got, the younger I was. You always feel like you're jammed for some money. And I thought, well, this is my increase. The government's stealing it before it gets to me. This is all I got.
Right.
If I got $100 because the government took 50, I don't have $150.
Right.
So I never got to touch that. The automatic deduction thing, they take it right out.
Well, I want to give you a platform to talk about something that I know you're passionate about by tossing you a softball question here. Okay. So I have to.
Are we done with the tithe?
No, it's about the tithe.
Oh.
So he brings up the question of, well, why the church and not other charities? And okay, well, we want to give it to God to further the mission, right? But we have all these parachurch organizations. Like,
Yeah.
can I give to a missions agency or a missionary specifically and count that as part of my tithe? Why? How do I suss out local church versus other groups or churches that are doing the Lord's work, that are on mission?
And that's a great question too. I can tell you my practice, and I can tell you my reason for this practice. I don't have a law for you. I think you should give it to the church. So if you want to give it to another church, fine, whatever. Because you're laying it at the apostles' feet. You're letting go of control, right? I think you should tithe that way. You give your first portion that way. But there's another principle, and that is where your money is, where your heart is. you may not like the way your church spends every dime, so you send some to Samaritan's Purse because they're a great organization. Well, you're not watching how they spend every dime. You know what they do in their offices? They put carpet in them.
Same thing they do in your church.
Yeah, and they buy all this extra coffee pods that you wouldn't buy. Why don't they buy cheaper coffee? And you just don't see how they spend it. They spend so much more on printing the mailing than you ever give them. But somebody's got to pay for the mailings. That increases, so there's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you think you're in control, you're not. But second, who do you love the most? If you spend more money to a missionary than you do to your local church, there's an indication you don't love the people of your own church, your own town. This is where this is where the Holy Spirit is working to minister to the people in your world so they have a healthy church. Now, your church can collectively give to others, and I have a friend who will not give to anyone but his church and let his church give to missionaries. I would say that is an arbitrary rule that he made up. It's not in the Bible. So my practice is my wife and I, we tithe to the church, but then we give extra also. So there's missionaries this church supports, and we don't send them all money. So if they're listening, I'm sorry, because you're about to find something out. But there's some of them we do every month. I think there's...
But you do support all of them through the tithe.
Through my tithe, a little portion, but some of them I send them...
Additional direct funding.
$50 a month to some of them. Not to some of you. If you're watching, they're just like, hey, what about me? Sorry, nothing personal, but according to what we can afford. But I'd also say that this generosity can be expressed by sharing with anybody. One day, for example, we had not much money living in California. And it's funny, I just got a text from my daughter. I got to read this to you. This is awesome.
I hope she's okay with that.
It doesn't matter. I'll apologize if she's not. She was asking about, they tithe, and she gives to certain other organizations close to her heart. And she heard about one I told her called Preborn, which does sonograms so you can see the baby. And they preach the gospel to everyone, but they try to save the baby by showing the baby. And she just sent me a text while I'm talking. It says, Preborn is the name of the organization you like, right? The pro-life one? I'm looking at their website, but want to confirm that they're legit. So there's my daughter. And where did she learn this, by the way? Here's something about teaching children. I taught my kids, if you get $10, give one at church. I had to learn the hard way. No one taught me. I had to figure it out over time, and then I'd hear a message on it here or there. I ended up doing it. But I taught them to do it by rote. If grandma sends you money, save 1/10 to the church. And they were excited about it because at first they don't know the difference between money, right? They're excited. Oh, yeah, I get to take this to church, right? And so they give. But now they're adults. They have jobs. I never tell them what they have to do. They tithe, and then they give above that according to as God moves them. And I never told them to do that either. But that's the practice I have. If you love your church, you take care of your church first. And plus, everyone's got their hand out for money. Everyone, and not for bad reasons. There are a lot of good organizations out there.
Your alma mater, geez.
How many times, though, is your church limited in what it can do because people don't think? It just doesn't seem as exotic or as interesting to bring it into my own storehouse. But it's those people who do commit to their local church who build a church. And really, it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people give 80% of the money here, if not more. And
it's more.
It's more. They give 90%?
Less than 20% of the people.
Give 80%. Less than 20. So they really, and then everyone else just comes and enjoys it. You know, someone had to build a building. Someone has to pay me if you want me to do this only. Someone has to pay the missionary. Someone has to cover all the expenses, pay for the technology we use to reach the world, pay for all these things. And most people just come and enjoy the fact that someone else is paying the bill, and they're not paying their portion. I think some people think, well, I don't have as much money as them. Well, you know what that's called?
Covetousness.
So if everyone made the exact same thing as you, would you then tithe? When I have money, I'll tithe. That never works. If you don't tithe when you have a little, you won't tithe when you have much. If you give 1% now, you'll give 1% then. The discipline of giving to the Lord teaches you to trust the Lord. And again, where your heart is, that's where your money is. You say, well, I don't know if I love my church. Why are you there? Find a church you love. Go to that one. I don't love any of them. Maybe you don't know Christ, because Jesus said that the love of the brethren is the sign that you're a Christian.
By this, all people will know.
Yes. So I would start with the tithe and move up. Now, if you're already in such a financial bind that 10% is completely undoable, start at 1% and make a faith promise to you and God next month, 2%. And just see if God doesn't bless that. And he will, by the way, if you're doing it for him and doing it cheerfully. If you're mad and, I'm not going to give to church, keep your money. Keep your money. God never depended on me or you to supply his needs. And, but yeah, so that's it on the tithe. That's all I got.
That's good. It's something we don't talk enough about, so I'm glad we spent some time today on it.
Yeah, probably everyone turned off the podcast right when we started. They're like, we ain't listening to this part.
That's all right. We'll talk about it again.
We will.
Force feeding them.
No, we should dangle a carrot. If you plant your seed at a Harvest Community Church, God's going to bless you. He's going to bless your socks off.
Later. Maybe.
I can't give you a promise that he's going to give you any money. If you give me 10%, no, not me. No one gives money to me, by the way. I tell people this. I don't get more money when there's more in the plate. It never works that way. But if you give the church more money, you'll just have less money. I can guarantee you that. But that doesn't mean the Lord won't supply you on earth in ways you don't expect, as well as heaven. Because many people I know have talked about freeing up, getting to the level where they finally tithe, and they go, the Lord has so blessed me since then. And I'm not saying, I don't know how God works.
Well, this isn't my story. I know we're long in the tooth, everybody, so this will be the wrap up. But
no, don't tell them to look at the clock. They were enjoying us so much. Now you've got them thinking it's gone on too long.
I'm thinking about the clock.
Why don't you have us on double speed? We should be on double speed. Then it's half
that hurts
the time.
my brain listening on double speed.
You have a small brain.
The Elijah story.
Yes.
Elijah, he's running away from Jezebel.
Looks like this.
Yep. And he stops the poor woman and her son.
Wait a minute. Is that the same? Doesn't he run into a cave then?
Yeah, at the end, God eventually confronts him.
Forget who he's running from. Let's just start with the poor woman and her son.
The poor woman only has one portion of oil
yes.
and flour left. That's it. And she's starving to death. And then I think in the passage it said she's going to die.
Widow of Zarephath.
After she's going to make this
I'm going to make one last bit of meal, feed my son, and we're going to die.
And we're going to die, right? And Elijah shows up and says...
What a happy woman.
Elijah shows up and says, no, give it to me. Make me your last little bit of meal.
Yes, if you're going to die anyway.
Well, this is it's like when you don't have a lot, this concept of like pouring it out in faith. Anyway, it's like she didn't know ahead of time that if she was faithful with that oil and meal, that God would replace it. Like she had to take the step.
And it never, that's right.
Without the promise.
That is right.
And eventually the oil never stopped pouring out and she had all this.
I don't think you can outgive God.
Exactly. But
yeah, I don't think you can outgive God. What you're saying is.
But you often have to take
the step.
You have to take the leap.
The step of faith.
Yeah.
And taking the step of faith to tithe is a step of faith for many. Because unlike my kids, you're like me. It didn't occur to you. Naturally, someone had to teach you this idea.
Well, budgets can be tight these days.
But I'll tell you what, it's such a pleasure, too. What happens is it becomes joyful to feel like I can give more money. I can, when you can, say, oh, blessed is the day when I can give more money. And I've also found that it's all about the heart. I know people who have very little, but they're so generous with everything they have. And I think God is pleased with that.
That's that Elijah story.
Yes, and they're just generous, and there's a joy that comes with generosity, and there's a sadness that comes with holding too tight to money. So anyway, at Harvest, we do try our best to spend the money in a way that's reasonable in our culture and not waste it. But if the guy who asked the question, if you want to tell me what it is you wish we didn't spend money on, we can have that conversation. But since I know who asked it, why don't you just hang in the church, keep going, and eventually you will be an elder here. And when you're an elder, you get to make the budget. And then you can have someone tell you they don't like your choices either. I mean,
and isn't that the truth?
Yes. Then
you
you know what it feels like.
It's like being the ref in a basketball game.
That's right. That's right. You better have a thick skin because there is no right way for everybody.
All right, everybody. Well, love you. It's always fun. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace.